Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Welcome to Hands on SAP Dev with me, DJ Q Macro. Another episode in the Exploring SAP Graph Together series. Episode 5, actually. We're going to get started with that shortly. So thanks so much for joining. And if you're watching the replay, thanks for watching the replay as well. I've got my coffee. I've got my Stormtrooper waffle biscuit. I'm thinking it might be quite a quiet live stream today. This is going to be my last Friday morning, my time, live stream for a few weeks. We're going to sort of pause the Friday morning live streams throughout August, and I'll start again in September. Good morning, Martin, again. Good morning from to Hanover. A beautiful day over here, coffee in hand and ready for another graph session. Brilliant. Hi, Martin, and welcome. Well, I can't say it's a beautiful day over here, although I suppose in one way it's beautiful, as in it's raining. I do like the rain, especially there's no wind. So I like the rain with no wind. Yeah, it's nice. So up here in Manchester, it's coolish now. Cooler. It's still like 12 degrees or something. Still. Anyway. So there we go. Yeah. So last stream for me for a few weeks. Let me just jump to the main scene. Just to let you know, the news is out. So the weekly news. We've got Marius. I think Tom did an item. I did an item, and also we've got the second of a series. We've got Julia Russo, SAP Community Advocate. Last week we had Menina Chow, also a Community Advocate. We're doing sort of a short series where we have the Community Advocates come in and do a spot on the SAP Developer News at the end. I think that's awesome. So kudos to all the community advocates. Next week we've got another community advocate doing another slot, and so on. So there we go. That's that. Let me just share that in the chat. The other thing was, talking of YouTube, just to for us to sort of figure out where we are. We've took a really, a high level look at SAP Graph, and we sort of started kicking the tires. Then we started looking at OAuth. And as a result of looking at OAuth from the perspective of the JavaScript scripts that Chaim had provided in his part 3 of the tutorial series, blog post series of tutorials, we looked even deeper last week at the flow. And I think in terms of the mechanics, I think we got to the end of that. And in fact, that reminds me, I have forked, let me make this, in fact, let me just make the default 100%, 110%. I always do that for the live stream. There we go. So I've forked the SAP samples graph example apps. So let me just share that with you as well. This repo, we did have a look at this briefly. This repo contains all the code samples and stuff that go along with the different blog posts in this series. So if we go here, let's just jump to the information map for a second. So this post by Stephanie last month gives us this sort of diagram. We have gone through this introduction to SAP Graph, Hello Graph, and authentication, this OAuth stuff. Then we did another OAuth session last week. Good afternoon, Guru, and welcome, Guru. So in the news today, in the SAP Developer News, we've got an item pointing to the new SAP Graph Data Protocol blog post, which is the one I had here from Florian. So check that out. In fact, let me go here, and it's against my religion to include query parameters like that. Let me go here and share that. There we go. Perfect. So have a look at that. And that's what we're going to go through today. with the help of some bits and pieces. But before we do, so this is what we've got here. We've got the code from the part 3, authentication. There's the blog post there, remember that from last week. And if we look at the code, this will take us to the tutorial 03 authentication, right? So that's fine. And we've got all the code here and all the instructions. So the code is in the source directory. There's the auth.js that we had a look at. And this is what we sort of pulled apart and worked out for ourselves. Now, what I've done is I have forked, in fact, it should be up here, right? I've forked this repo. Here, you've already forked graph example apps. I forked it into my own user account because I wanted to mess around with it. And what I've done is I've added in the source directory, which is where we were working last week, I've added, oh, that was weird. You needed to refresh the page to get the live stream. Interesting. Okay. Very strange. Let me know if it's working okay now. It should be working okay now. The stream says it's healthy, says I'm online. So yeah, I think so. I think so. But let me know. Thanks, Martin. What I've done is I've written up what we did last week. So if, in fact, let me go here. If we go to the source directory, the equivalent of the source directory in my fork of 03 authentication, let me share that with you as well. You'll see a number of files. There's the auth.js, the graph.js, and the hello quotes from Chaim, from the original, from the upstream. But the 3 little scripts, well, they're not really scripts, they're just sort of static things, you know, putting things together. They're in here. So there's the URL that we constructed together to go and request the authorization grant. There is the curl command that we used to go and request an access token in exchange for the authorization code that we'd received and we were then supplying their code. And there is the other curl command, the request. Okay, thanks, Martin. Working fine now. Samuele, good morning. Streaming, it's okay. Thanks, Samuele, for confirming as well. Brilliant. So there is also the script that we used. Well, again, not a script. It's just a command that we used to do the refresh. Now, what I've also done is just written that all up in this file here. So if you look at the authentication code flow, there's a reference to the live stream recording. There's the protocol flow and refresh token diagrams that we looked at. There's the protocol flow and there's the refresh token diagram. And then we got the step 0, go and get the credentials, store them safely, create a symbolic link. That's what we did. Then we did the request authorization grant. There's the step 1. There's and then use this thing here, the 1 request auth grant. There's where we requested the access token and a little bit of an explanation of the stuff that you get back. And that's where we did the refresh token. So there we go. So hopefully that will, let me just share that one as well. Why not? Because there, right. So that is, a 1 markdown file summary of what we did last week. So hopefully that's helpful. So let's start having a look through here. I'm hoping this is going to be like a fairly relaxed one. Let me know in the chat. There's only a few of us today, which is great. Well, I mean, it's great that, anybody's joined and it's great that there's loads of people, but gives us a chance to, have an equal footing on what we do here. But I would like to use Florian's blog post just to explore, because the title of this, what's the title of this? Can't remember. Exploring the OData surface area around the CustomerQuote entity. That's right, yes. Now, the thing I found fascinating about the fact that Chaim previously and Florian now is doing is that they chose the CustomerQuote entity, because that really helps us think about the one domain model, the graph, the data graph, going across different backend systems. Now, on the surface, which is where we're going to be moving today, the surface area, we're not aware of how these actual individual calls and where this data are going to be resolved, which different systems. We know in theory that the a customer quote is probably in a C4C system, an SAP Sales Cloud system, and we know that other data is going to be in an S4 HANA system, S4 HANA Cloud, whatever. But the point is, as developers, as opposed to key users and administrators, as developers, we shouldn't have to care. I mean, I do want to care because I want to understand how it all works, right? So let's explore that together. Now, we did the OData based authentication last week, and that was for an endpoint which we were using here. I'll make it a little bit bigger, for an endpoint that we were using last week as well, which is this thing here. And I dug out a Chrome extension which will enable us to use either an access token that we've retrieved through that authentication code flow, or the API key, which this one tells us about, in the browser. So we can do it from the command line using curl. I think this one recommends, or says you could use Postman, for example. Or is it Postman? Postman. Yeah, if you're using Postman, you don't need to worry, etc. Blah, blah, blah. But I like to use Chrome because I like to use my extensions to explore the XML and or the JSON using the extensions I have. So this extension here, what's it? I don't even know what it's called. Modify header value. Chrome extension. There we go. Chrome extension modify. That's me just looking for it before. Modify header value. This is the extension that I'm using. Let me share that. And this allows us to say for URLs, for requests that go to URL starting with this. Let me make it a little bit bigger. Collapse the setting. We don't need the instructions either. And thank goodness that the access token is so long that it doesn't even fit on the screen, so that's fine. It's perfectly safe to show. For URL starting eu30.graph.sap/API, and that, according to Florian here, where is it? Is the where is it? EU30. There, that is the URL of the SAP Graph sandbox. No, that is the productive URL, okay, of SAP Graph. Okay, so that's what we were hitting last week. But this time, because why not? Let's go back to where we were and use the SAP Graph Sandbox provided to us by the SAP API Business Hub. And for that, we need the API key. So I've already got my access token. I don't know whether it's still valid. But anyway, we're not going to use that. We're going to use the SAP Graph Sandbox. And that has a URL prefix of sandbox.api.sap.com/SAP Graph, and anybody can do this. And if you want to do the other one, the productive one, you can go and request the credentials.json, look at the blog post that we looked at previously. I think part 3, Chaim tells us how to do that. So I need my API key from the API Business Hub. So we'll do that. So what I'm going to do is say here, okay, so whenever we go in Chrome to a URL starting like this, and in fact, I'm going to open up a new thing here because I think this is going to be a bit longer. In fact, I don't need that yet, do I? Whenever we do that, I want a header called API key to be supplied, and the value is going to be my API key. Okay, so we've got the productive SAP Graph endpoint there with a bearer token, and we've got the API key. I'm going to plug in a minute. Let me just do that like that. Make that even smaller. So hopefully, how much space have we got here? Maybe even smaller. So we can see what we're doing. But one thing I'm going to do, in fact, let's go here, right? api.sap.com. I'll log in, go to my settings. Now I'm going to go into, and remind me to come back out of secret if I forget, as always. I'm going to go into secret, grab my API key, copy it and close. There we go, back out of secret. Perfect. I'm going to paste it into here. There it is. And that is not the entire API key, of course. So that's good. So I'm going to add that. Right, there we go. So now if I go to Sandbox, well, let's go to one of the URLs, right? Sandbox, there we go, let's pick that one. So where are we going? We're going to, and there we go, it's working, it's working. Perfect. So let's enjoy what we're doing here. So I would definitely recommend, I only found this extension the other day, so it's really cool for exploring things like this. So if we work through, is that a good thing to do? Let's work through this together. So what are we seeing here? Let's just go through this really slowly. To retrieve the metadata of the sales domain in SAP Graph, make the following request. Okay, so let's pick those words, right? We've got the previous sentence, SAP Graph makes metadata available for each namespace. So I think it's fair to say that you can use the word namespace and domain interchangeably here. So we have a namespace, a domain, like sales or product or procurement or business partner. These are all names. These are all domains. These are all business domains. So I suppose when we're thinking of this in terms of sort of, with our business hat on, we're thinking of these as data domains. When we're thinking in terms of APIs and SAP Graph as a data graph from a technical perspective, I suppose we'd use the word namespace because that makes sense to us as developers and consumers of this API. So they're interchangeable. And I'm hoping most, if not all of us here will recognize what this is. This is, well, first of all, it tells us here an EDMX specification, an entity data model in XML. And where have we seen that before? Of course, in an OData service. So as we have seen before in the tutorials, and I think we know this anyway, the surface area of SAP Graph is exposed to us in the form of OData, and not just any old OData, but OData version 4. And we can see that here, version 4. Now, one of the nice things about using Chrome to do this is that we can collect and expand. I'm sure you can probably do something similar in Postman. Nothing against Postman, but I've got Chrome. I like to use it. So let's just collapse this up and just understand what the structure of a metadata document is. I'm going to open that up, and we can see we've got a number of references here, EDMX references, and it points to other things. Let's come back to that maybe. So let's just collapse these. This is what I like to do. Oops. What I like to do when I'm sort of exploring. Oh, that's the reason. Make that a bit bigger so it's no single line will do. When I'm exploring things and trying to work things out, I read a bit of the documentation, but I also just stare at things. So let's stare at this stuff together. So we've got a number of references here, and now one. There we go. It's all on one line. Oh, one more line. Come on. There we go. Perfect. So look at the pattern. We've got references to absolute URLs or URIs, and we've got references to relative URIs. And these dots work exactly the same in URIs and URLs as they do in file systems. But we'll come to those in a minute. So what have we got here? We've got references to different entity data model sets of definitions for things. What is it? Well, if we have a look, just stare at it for a bit. There are two domain names here. Both of them on GitHub. One from Oasis TCS Technical Committee Standards or something. I don't even know what that stands for. Maybe we'll find out. And one from SAP, right? Samueli, modify header value in the browser. Useful. I can switch off Fiddler. Yeah, Fiddler's good as well. I like Fiddler. I've used Fiddler in the past, but this is makes it just so easy, right, Samueli? Yeah, exactly. So if we go here, if we just stare at this, right? These are, let's have a look. Let's go here. Capabilities. Let's open up a new tab and look at that. So this is, it's like turtles all the way down. It's EDMX all the way down. So what that was referencing is another entity data model that contains what? That contains annotations, terms, complex type definitions, all sorts of different things. And if you just stare at this for a little bit, just stop there, acceptable encoding, supported formats, supported metadata formats, batch continue on error supported. These are all OData things, right? So OData itself is described using OData as it almost, you got to think of it like that, right? So that's what this is. So we can sort of, safely be happy and comfortable and sort of say, okay, well, it's to do with being able to describe things in other metadata descriptions using capabilities. There's another one here, OData core. Let's have a look at that one. OData, org.odata.core. Can we just go in there and replace that? .core. There we go, yeah. So core.links, OData versions, schema version, revisions, really basic stuff, right, to do with things like this, version. Okay, so we can sort of safely, happily ignore that for now. But we've also, from SAP's vocabularies, OData vocabularies, we've got common here. What's that one? I think I missed out the H in HTTP, so I'll add that in a minute. There we go. Let's go to the front. So we've got common terms for all SAP vocabulary. Make it a bit bigger. For all SAP vocabularies. So we've got links, we've got experimental, service version, label, heading, text for. So these are almost like meta. This is metadata for the metadata. Okay, so we can again safely sort of think, okay, well, that's all already been taken care of, being taken care of for us. This is a super interesting one, ODM. What the heck is this? ODM. Terms for one domain model. So it's more metadata for metadata relating to, more metadata for services in the one domain model concept, right? So we've got, again, links, we've got code lists. Maybe I was looking at yesterday at this stuff, and I came across a code list. So in fact, this is because SAP Graph is still in beta. It's important to point out that this is still beta. There are things we may find that are a bit weird, or I don't quite understand, or maybe incomplete, or that's what beta's about, right? And again, here it's just it's a very small but still perfectly formed so far thing. So we got a term called code list. Maybe we'll come across that. So we've got that as well, okay? And we got personal data. You can sort of imagine the sorts of things that are in here. But what are these? Well, before we look at these, let's have a look at what we've got inside the actual data set, inside the what I think of as the main part, the meat of the metadata. When I say that, I always try and think, well, I want to be inclusive with vegetarians and vegans, and saying it's the meat of the thing is a little bit sort of meat oriented. Is that should I be worried about that? What should I say? I don't know. Anyway, so let's just collapse these again. Schema, namespace, schema. It's just this is what I do. It's like, what is the pattern? What's the 10,000 feet view? Oh, there we go. Right. Okay. So now I can see in the metadata description. In the metadata file document, metadata document, that's the right term, for the sap.odm.sales domain or namespace, we've got definitions of multiple namespaces here. Sales, asset management, common address and common, and finance and accounting and finance. We can ignore the API for now. Let's just ignore that for now. I think that's just a way, I did ask them, it's just a way of sort of differentiating translating between how this is defined in the back end and how it's exposed at a multiple metadata document level in OData. Okay, so just ignore the .api at the end for now. Finance, logistics, org units, sales org units, sales, etc. Right. So we're going to explore the customer quote. So let's see if we can find. Will it find it in a collapse thing? No. Okay, let's expand it all. Let's just refresh that. Customer quote. I mean, the whole document, right? It's huge. Loads of definitions in here, right? And there's annotations as well, as you can see. So let's go with customer quote. Let's find that, right? Customer quote. There we go. Entity type, customer quote. Straight to it. So this is what we're going to explore. Now, one of the things, in fact, I'll just switch this around for a second. One of the things that this talks about in the customer quote thing is expanding and restricting the response. So let's just jump down for a second. This talks about expanding the items And then within the items, we expand the product. Now, let's just have a look at what that actually means. We've got a customer quote entity type. Okay, and that entity type's got a ton of properties, right? A ton of properties, all the way down to there. And we've got, there's the items. So before we do anything else, right, let's just stare at this for a second. This is a navigation property, and we all know that a navigation property, well, hopefully you all know, is an OData concept, which is, well, this thing is related to this thing. These are two separate independent entities, but they're related, right? And notice that in OData v4, I think that the way that the relationship is described is a lot clearer than how it was described in version 2, OData version 2. I like the fact that we have this type equals collection of entity type. So if we look here, right, customer quote items, search for that, there is the entity type definition for that entity type. There's the definition for the entity type. It's quite hard to sort of figure out the terminal, how to express things, out loud. So we have in the entity type, customer quote items, we've got quantity unit, the ID, and all that sort of stuff, right? We'll come to that in a second, right? So there's that. Let's go back up again. That's where we refer. So this, we've got a customer quote entity type, and it's got a number of properties like display ID, text, currency, processing status, distribution channel, blah, 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 blah. So let's do that. Let's go here. In fact, if I make these sort of, we'll go through this document together. So what this is saying here is it's saying, okay, well, let's just do this first one and have a look at it. Let's go here and let's go back again. Where I want a full URL. Where's the first bit? Let's have the first bit. There we go. There we go. Okay, so let's open up a new tab, put that there, but also then go back and find, where was it? There, that'll do. SAP ODM.sales, customer quote, top one, select total amount. So these, I mean, this is a little bit of a, and as you can see, did you notice that the way Florian had written this, this is effectively the path info that relates specifically to that particular entity and the way that we're describing how we want to restrict the response and expand the response potentially later on down the line for the SAP ODM sales. There is actually a, in the real, and this is to do with the sandbox SAP Graph tenant, right? Which starts, sandbox.api.sap.com. In the real productive URL, we got the EU30.graph.sap/API and then /v1. Okay, so the productive URLs are versioned. The APIs are versioned. So SAP Graph and then bang, there. That makes sense, right? It's the way this is divided up. So what do we get? Well, first of all, what do we get by default in OData v4? We get a JSON response. The representation of the resource that we're requesting, using HTTP terms hopefully correctly, is JSON. And what have we done? What have we said here? We said customer quote. I only want the first one. So 1, that's restricting in the list because customer quote, this is an entity set, right? And I only want that property, total amount. Okay. Now you would get the ID as well because the ID, if we look at it, the ID is defined as being a property that's a key property. So we get the key property sort of for free. We always get that. We can't avoid having that. Otherwise, I suppose you could say, well, what is the point of having something with that but not that? Because then it's contextless and you wouldn't know what that relates to. Okay, so far so good. So what's that done? That has had no, let's put that back actually. That is saying, well, I want what was it we wanted? The total amount. There, total amount is, where is it? There, total amount, which is a simple type, edm.decimal. Okay, scale 6, precision 22. The total amount is, all right, well, there's no decimal places there, 890, whatever currency is. Now, the next thing that we do here, or Florian gets us to do, let's just change the query string. Let's go back and add on to there, or change that to say, top one, same as before, select total amount, same as before, and expand, $expand equals items. Let's just do that, and I'm going to read out Samuel's question. Is that big enough, by the way? There we go. I'm thinking navigation will span on different systems. For example, quotes from C4C and sales orders from S4H, aggregated and exposed by SAP Graph. Samuel, that's exactly right. And that is, that's one of the superpowers of SAP Graph, right? We as API consumers, as developers, building stuff and consuming the SAP Graph as a whole, we don't care, we don't know, and we shouldn't have to care and shouldn't have to know where this data actually is. It's taken care of for us by SAP Graph itself, by the tenant. And of course, that is not magic. That's down to configuration. That the key users and the administrators of the SAP Graph tenant, when you subscribe to it, you do that as well. And I think a little bit later on in the series, the SAP Graph folks are going to be sort of explaining a little bit about that as well. And hopefully we'll get to dig into that together. But yes, absolutely right. The navigation. And in fact, I think this is where this tutorial, this blog post is leading. And this is why I'm also sort of deliberately not yet talking about the other references that we saw at the top of the metadata, right? Go to the top. There, these here. There. Those. Right? But let's just have a look at this first. What is this doing? What is it saying? Is it saying, I would like to expand something? What does expand mean? It basically means, well, where you've got a navigation property, go and get the entities that are related through that navigation property relationship definition. So what we're saying here is CustomerQuote. Oh, in fact, let me go back up again. There. So this thing here, what we're doing really, if I put up another tab and do that, that's the root of what we're looking at right now. We're just sort of, modifying our request with these query parameters. I think they're called OData system query options, right? If we say CustomerQuote, we're going to get a ton of stuff. Value, we get 135 customer quotes, okay? And we get that because it's an entity set. But what we're saying is top equals, top equals 2. And we get 2. There's the first one. There's the second one. The first one is a, I don't know, what is it? There's no text, I don't know. This is just sandbox data, right? C4C1, and that is C4C25. I think the ID, right? The ID, to your question, Samueli, that gives us a bit of a clue. We can read a lot into things that are inadvertently and beautifully leaked. This is probably a quote number 25, in a C4C system. Yeah? Not an S4HANA system, for example. Now, let's just continue down Samuel's question. After looking at this items thing. So we've got these items here. There's only one item here. And again, let's have a look at this CustomerQuote. We were looking at CustomerQuote, weren't we? There we go. There. Entity.CustomerQuote. And we have followed. Come on, highlight it. I'll do that then. This navigation property. Where does it go? sap.odm.sales.api.CustomerQuote_items. Okay, so it's prefixed with a namespace, sap.odm.sales, and it's CustomerQuote items. Let's have a look again. CustomerQuote items. We did find that, didn't we? CustomerQuote items. in this metadata document. So we've sort of entered, just think of this in terms of you're entering in, you're diving into the SAP Graph, the data graph, the unified data model, the one data model. We're diving in at a particular point. You know, there's a swimming pool of stuff, right? You can only dive in from one particular part of the swimming pool, right? You dive into some part of the water. That's what we're doing here. And what we're looking at, we're sort of dived into the sales domain area of that swimming pool. So in the metadata document that relates to where we've dived in, the entry point, we've got all the entity type definitions in that area, right? So customer quote item. And that will be resolved to a backend system in the configuration at the SAP Graph tenant side of things. But that's another story. So customer quote items, what have we got? There's only a few things there. We've got an ID, which is a key. We've got a navigation property, which is, of course, you know, understandable. How do we get from an item back up, right? In fact, even there, up. And it goes back to the customer quote that it belongs to, goes back up to its parent. We've got a property name text. So what that item is. We've got another navigation property here, which goes somewhere else. We'll come back to that. We've got quantity, we've got a quantity unit, we've got an ID. It's interesting that the ID is all the way down there. I always see I think the ID is at the top. Anyway, it doesn't matter what order they're in, right? This is not ordered. And we've also got a navigation property going to called comments. So comments on the customer quote, comments on this particular item of this particular customer quote. Okay, and this goes to a customer quote items comments entity type. Is that in here anywhere? Yes, it is. Oh, there it is. There, right below it. There we go. Can't see for looking. However, and this is the super interesting thing, I think, and goes back to your question, Samuel. Check this out. Navigation property, product, type equals SAP ODM product API product. Vinay, welcome Vinay. Vinay says, I can imagine SAP Graph as a hamster pipe cheval gym. I'm not sure what the word cheval as in horse, chevalier, I don't know. But hamster pipe gym. Yeah, so you've got different sort of cages and like tubes between them, and yeah, why not? Why not think of it like that? That's quite cool. Hauptsache, I don't know why I said that in German. The main thing is that they're all interlinked and interrelated because the hamsters can get from here to here, right? Nice. I like that, Vinay. It's almost like, a token. It's like a hamster gym combined with the old sort of token ring network idea where you have to, there's a token that has to go through. Anyway, I don't know where I'm going with that. The cool thing about this, I noticed when I was looking at this earlier this week, if we have a look at sap.odm.product, we saw that. Where did we see that? sap.odm.product. We saw that here, right at the start. So I would think, customer quote items, I would think that if we search for product, we can probably get a lot of hits, but let's just search for product in terms of, why do we search for, right? Entity type name equals product. Okay, so we're searching for the definition of the entity type product in the namespace sap.odm.product. We're not finding it. We're finding the namespace reference, but this is in that reference thing, which we'll come to in a minute. That's there. Where else have we got it? Oh, there we go. Look, there's another navigation property to the. God, I hear my stomach there. I'm starving. To the product entity type in the SAP ODM product domain namespace. Probably another one. The other two of the 2 of 5 are also similar. Yeah. So we got inside the customer order service aspect reference objects entity type. We've got another nav prop to a product, and there as well in customer quote items. There, oh, we're back to where we were, right? Back to where we were. So how do we resolve that? Okay, so what we get so far, okay, in the relationship that's described and defined in OData and resolved or made real, reified by SAP Graph behind the scenes, what we get is the items. Let's go back here. Let me just bring. I'm trying to just display all things together so we can sort of think about this together. So let's do that and have it like that. There we go. There we go. Oh, Martin says, "Oh, Vinay, you've retracted your message about hamsters. That's a shame." But there we go. That was quite cool, I thought. I think we will get to that in later sessions, but one big question in my head is, how do you keep the IDs unique if you have multiple backends for one purpose? I think there are so many questions like this, so many really important questions like this that I want to ask and also answer. So Martin, yes, I don't have the knowledge yet to know, so I'm not going to guess. I mean, I think part of the resolution of that might be handled at the SAP Graph tenant level, but let's leave that question for now. You're right. We'll hopefully answer it in a later session. I mean, also, by the way, folks, let me know generally in the chat whether this SAP Graph series has been useful. Let me know specifically. Type in the chat which bits you liked, which bits you didn't like, so I can do more of the first bit and less of the things you didn't like when we resume in September, right? So we're going to continue this until I'm learning with you, right? So let's learn this together. So Samuel says, products from MDM, wow, or better, some properties from MDM and some from e-commerce. Too much, my brain is exploding. Samuel, that's exactly the feeling I have too. This is such an awesome concept, SAP Graph. What it is trying to achieve, what it is achieving already in beta form. Yeah, it's just, it's a really hard problem to address, but it's important to address, and kudos to the SAP Graph team for doing this. So yeah, exactly. So let's just dig into this a little bit. So we've got the customer quote, top equals 1. There it is, there, value, and there's a don't forget, if we said what we're saying is, let me just make that way instead, right? Let me say boing, customer quote top equals 1. We're still asking for an entity set, but we're asking for an entity set with one item in it. That's why we still get an array as a response. If we were to ask for a specific customer quote by supplying the key and doing it that way, we would get a single value. But anyway, let's not go there for now. Let's just do something. Let's continue in this thing here. So many different ways we can go in this conversation. So, and we're following the navigation property. Where's the thing? Expand equals items. The expand equals items there is causing this part of the result. And because, where's the items? Customer quote, put a thing there. Where is it? There, because, where is it? There, because the type of this navigation property is a collection, we get an array, right? It's a one-to-many, obviously, right? Customer quote items. In the items, we get the various properties, text, quantity units, ID, but this product here, we're already getting, we've not asked to expand a product, but by default, what we'll get is the key, okay? The key that links the customer quote item with the product that it relates to. Now, how is that resolved? Let's go back to sap.odm.product. There. It's not defined. The product entity is not defined. Sorry, do it properly. The product entity type is not defined in this metadata document. This is one part of the swimming pool that we've dived into in the sort of the sales domain area. But regardless of where we dive in, we have links in this metadata document to elsewhere. Look, ... What does that mean? Go up one. Go across to sap.odm.product and look at the metadata. So let's do that. Let's open that up. Oh, we don't need that anymore. We do need that. Oh yeah, okay, let's do that. Put another tab in, go there, and let's put that next to there instead, right? Go there, but product. That's what we're doing, going up to SAP Graph and then along to SAP ODM product and then down into the metadata. Now, of course, unless you sort of stare for more than 5 seconds, it all looks the same because it's just XML and it's, blue and purple and whatever that color is. But actually, just stare at it for a little bit longer and we'll see that it's different. I mean, we know it's different because it's a different URL, but look, there's only one back reference here. Here we've got 4 back, let's call them, what are we going to call these? Sort of side references to the products namespace, to the business partner namespace, to the procurement namespace, to the workforce namespace. That's an exciting one, workforce. This one only has a side reference to the procurement namespace. But in here, hopefully, this is where we'll see, oh, there you are, look. This is where we'll see the entity type definition for product. So the SAP graph, the data graph, there's not one single massive metadata document that describes everything. Otherwise, you have different domains and the domains are managed sort of separately, but they're related, right? So let's have a look at type. No, is it name equals name? Entity type name equals, I can't type, equals product. There we go. Entity type name equals product. So the product entity type to which we have a navigation property, CustomerQuote items. Where is it? Here. Is defined in a separate metadata document that's related through an EDMX reference. So if we have a look at Florian's blog post here, which is super useful to read through, so I definitely recommend you read through it. Here, check this baby out. And this is one of the beauties, again, that OData v4 introduces, the cleaner way of being able to express a nested expand. So what we're saying here is, I'd like an entity set of CustomerQuote elements. I only want one, right? And I only want for that the total amount property, but I want all the items, and for every item, brackets, I want to expand the navigation property called product. So that's saying I want all the items and I want to expand this navigation property. So not only will we get the ID, which we sort of get automatically, what else would you put there if as an OData server, what else would you give if you weren't explicitly asked for an expansion? So let's do that. Let's follow Florian's example and add on this bit. Where are we? Where's the data? There we go. No, what? Hello? Where's the data? Oh, it's here, isn't it? Yes, there we go. And expand equals, I wish you could sort of make the URL bar bigger so we could see. Expand equals items, and then within the items, $expand equals, and what is it? not products, because it's not called the property, navigation property, it's called product. And why is it called product singular? Because there's only one product related to an item, right? Makes sense. Check it out. I mean, it's a little bit underwhelming because this is just sandbox test data. There's no data in there. However, the super exciting thing is that we get the properties. And also, this is another feature of OData v4 which I really like. We get a really concise summary of the context of this particular resource. Okay, so we get the customer quote with the total item, the ID, and the items, and the products within the items. So I've noticed there's some chat here. Very useful. So many questions, and it's great discovering it with you. Oh, well, thank you, Martin. It's great discovering it together, and I am, literally discovering it, step by step with you folks as well. I like the detailed explanation of authorization. I guess it is OAuth. It is, Vinay, it is OAuth. Yes, exactly. So if you check out the links I've put earlier on, that is the authorization code flow, which is the one that involves a human as a resource owner, as well as the authorization server, and there are links to the diagrams in the OAuth RFC. What's the OAuth RFC? Something 5679, is it? OAuth RFC 6749. Fail. Anyway. Vinay says, it is like connecting our home's hamster gym to the neighbour's Vinay, you can come again. That was amazing. That's such a brilliant metaphor or analogy. Hamster gyms, it's hamster gyms all the way down and all the way across the street. It is. That house over there is MDM, that house over there is C4C, that house over there is S4, and they're all connected by tubes. Right, I'm going to try and incorporate that into next episode. So, use case found in yesterday user requirement, says Sam Whaley. User asked us, can we show the configuration, BOM, the bill of materials, of this product in this Fiori app? Yes, but we have to connect to S4. We are reading C4C. Exactly. That's a beautiful use case of SAP Graph. There are millions of use cases of SAP Graph. That's a classic. That's like a classic use case. Rather than connect to two separate systems and then also have to, in your own head, work out what the relationships are and do all that lifting. That's what SAP Graph does. It's similar, I think, to managed associations. I think in CAP, in the SAP Cloud Application Programming Model, you have associations, right? For example, and you have managed associations where you can just define at a high level the relationship between this entity and that entity, and you don't have to mess around with foreign keys and generating, properties with underscore ID on or whatever, and, managing all that stuff. CAP does it for you, which is beautiful. This is a similar sort of thing, right? You don't have to worry about that. Anyway, in the future app will be connected to SAP Graph, and then the universe in our hand. The universe will be in your hand somewhere. Exactly. So, are we all on board with what's happened here? We have, at one level, we've moved from one metadata document to another, but these metadata documents are all related to one another. They're all siblings of one another. But in terms of the OData operation, okay, we've done a query, an OData query operation. It's a query because we're asking for an entity set as a result. If we were just asking for a single entity in a single entity form, we'd be asking for a read. But anyway, we'll do that another time. So that OData operation is resolved by using the metadata documents or using the metadata definitions across multiple metadata documents. And it's resolved at the SAP Graph tenant level by talking to multiple systems. Again, we don't know what those multiple systems are. We can take a guess, and we want to guess because we're trying to figure out how it works. One is C4C and one is S4. And I think that's probably a good time to, a good point to end, right? What are we looking at here? Yeah, there we go. displayId P4. Yeah. I think, oh yeah, what is there anything else that Florian shares here? We've done the expand items, expand product. Oh yeah, one more thing here. We can also, within the nested expand, we can then say, well, within the product entity type that we've expanded to, I want to restrict the output. You know, for example, here, this is test data, right? There's no data there. So let's just not bother with that. But let's have, instead of having, let's do that. Let's get rid of that again. Let's go, in fact, let's go back, right, to where we were. Oh, what? Where are we? Okay, that's where we were. But we want the, what was it called? We want the, where's the product? We want the display ID, because that had a value in it, didn't it? So we can say here, expand equals product, which we got, right? There. But within there, we can say $select, if I can spell it right, select equals display ID. Only, well, that's just for the sake of argument, let's say I would like the display ID and, I don't know, the language, which is null, but who cares, right? Language. Ooh. Display ID language, I can't remember how to specify to. Oh, I know, because, there we go, language. There we go. Let's just stare at it for a second to understand that this product information, in particular the display ID in the language, is coming from one system, but the items and the ID of the customer quote is coming from another system. Okay, it's 8:56. That was well timed, wasn't it? It wasn't really planned. And I've still got half a biscuit left, stuck to my tissue. It's not very nice, is it? There we go, half a biscuit, half a cup of coffee. I think we'll call it there. Are there any more questions before we break for August? And also, you haven't managed to let me know in the chat which bits you liked and which bits you didn't like. Let me know on Twitter or let me know in comments to this video, you know, YouTube comments. Let me know however you want. So I can just tune the next episodes accordingly, you know. We're all discovering this together. But of course, you know, you only have the chat, the text to say what you want. So tell us what you want. And with that, I'm going to wish you a happy rest of Friday, happy weekend, and I'll see you again on this Friday show in September. Bye for now.